Right, well, hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Spill the Tea Tutor Talks, and we are joined by the wonderful Sarah today talking about a popular topic, which is dyslexia. So we're going to be asking Sarah some interesting questions today to illuminate her journey and hopefully share some tips and strategies along the way. So to kick us off, Sarah, would you like to just introduce yourself to our lovely listeners and viewers?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So my name is Sarah Webb. I run Read to Grow Tuition. I've been a private tutor for 7 or nearly 8 years, actually. This year will be 8 years. It's gone really, really quickly. And a primary school teacher, qualified back in 2003, which again seems like such a long time ago. I qualified SENCO, and then I took the leap into full-time tutoring. I've had 2 periods where I've been a full-time tutor. So after I had my first son, I spent a couple of years just tutoring, then I had my daughter, then went back as a SENCO for a couple of years part-time. But now I've been, fully fledged full-time tutor for the last couple of years. It's been a good journey, and different sort of curveballs and things that are thrown in the way to make you choose different directions. But yes, that's primary school teacher, and tutor for 7 years. Back my first full year as a teacher, I worked at quite a challenging school, and I stayed there for 3 years. And then I moved on to a different school, and I taught older children. At my second school, I taught younger children. They were working at a much higher level, and that really got me interested in that whole kind of special needs and areas that the schools were in, and what an impact that could have, and kind of family background. And so I've always really had an interest in how children learn and those kind of differences, really. And so when I moved to my second school, and the opportunity came up to go for the role of SENCO. And so I went for the role as assistant head for inclusion with special needs, SENCO. And really, it was at that point, so that was back in 2012. It was really at that point, I suppose, I kind of delved a little bit deeper into why children were having particular difficulties. And then you start to think about the kind of lack of training that maybe teachers have in the classroom, or children themselves not really understanding why perhaps they're learning in different ways. And I was really lucky. I worked at a school where we had a really good group of teaching assistants. We had sort of specialist TAs and things. But it was really those children that maybe didn't have a diagnosis of dyslexia, that maybe have just kind of gone, just kind of bobbing along in class, maybe in classes, those lower ability children, which actually, if they have different strategies and things put in place for them, they could really go on to achieve and thrive. And it's kind of from there, really. So go all the way back to when I first started teaching, then becoming a SENCO, and that's really where I did start to kind of unpick that I had this kind of passion to help those children learn in maybe different ways, and then becoming specialising in dyslexia has kind of stemmed from there, really. So once I did start private tutoring, I had a lot of requests once I'd left my school. I live in the same areas as what I taught in. I had a lot of requests from parents whose children were maybe had been put on the special needs register, all these things. And I kind of built from there, really. So I do a lot of 11+ tutoring, but I also then work with a lot of children who have special educational needs, and a lot of those children had difficulties with literacy. Just kind of unpicked, and for such a long time I ummed and ahed, should I do a dyslexia specialist? Should I just be a specialist teacher? Should I look at doing the level 7 course so that I could assess? And really, for a good couple of years, after my daughter was born, so she's 6.5 now, I was really kind of, you have all those thoughts saying, am I good enough to be a dyslexia specialist in a sense? Well, have I got the time to be able to do that? What is it that I can offer families? I'll talk a bit more about my course in a minute, but what I had in my head is I don't just want to be able to assess the children and then kind of leave them. I want to be able to either assess with follow-up kind of packages or work with schools. So yeah, it's been a really long journey to get to the point where I am at now, and I'm literally just waiting for my final assessment to be signed off to get my qualification. So fingers crossed, springtime I'll be able to really start assessing and be able to offer those packages out a little more. I looked at a whole range of different courses, like online or traveling into London, that type of thing, and I suppose I underestimated how much work it would be. That's what I would say to anybody who is considering it. It really is a commitment. You really have got to put your heart and soul into it. And I know as teachers, tutors, we do that anyway. But it was really, it's been hard work. It's been really rewarding, but it's definitely been hard work. And I've had to really stay focused with what I want to achieve kind of at the end of it and the reasons why. But I started the course back in September 23. I've done some research and I found a course that initially said it was a year's course. And instead of doing a level 5 and then doing a level 7, this was a postgraduate certificate in specialist teaching and assessing. So the course was advertised as a year. Started, they then said that they'd increased the course to, would be 16 months. Right. And I can completely see why that is now. I had a friend who had done the course before in a year, and she said it was just really full on.
Right, okay, right.
Now, so our tutor kind of informed us that it's actually now been extended to 2 years. So yeah, I do get that, because there's so much involved in becoming a specialist, and to be able to assess, because I think at the end of the day you're assessing, you're making a diagnosis, and you can't get that wrong.
Of course, yeah. The weight of it is rather intense, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And there's so much to learn, and I've still got so much to learn as well. I think even though I'm at the very final point of, hopefully qualifying, it's the very start, ECT or, a new tutor, isn't it? It's that whole thing of that you're just at the very start of your journey when you actually start doing it for real, aren't you?
Yeah, it's kind of like hitting the ground running.
On the course that were, still teaching full time, or they were teaching part time, tutoring part time, doing the course, family life. So it's definitely, you have to definitely ring fence time. So that's what I'd say to anybody that that would be considering becoming a dyslexia specialist. That you have to ring fence some time to be able to complete the course, to make sure that you are able to fulfill the needs of the course, but also to make sure you feel that you're prepared to go out there in the big wide world on your own.
Yeah.
Because you are at the end of the day, aren't you? Once you become qualified, it's kind of like, all right, off you go. There are lots of free courses out there that you can do to kind of improve your knowledge on dyslexia. Obviously, even on the Twinkl website, there are loads of resources that you can use to support children with dyslexia, and there are programs, like schemes of work type things on Twinkl that you can use to kind of help you structure. And obviously the phonics resources and stuff, I use them all the time, because it's so handy, in your subscription, that you've got everything, and you can do the Rhino readers and stuff. So for a private tutor who is working, on your own, you don't have a school, you don't have loads of resources to go to. So, my ultimate package subscription is like the best thing, because I've got reading books at the tips of my fingers. I've got the resources that I can, and I really, I wouldn't say that if I didn't use it. I use them all the time. So, definitely tapping into what is available. I mean, we at university, we use the Kelly and Phillips books, and they talk about using a multisensory approach to teaching for the students. And there's like a whole program in there. So the Katie Griggs book, which is completely written in a dyslexia friendly way, and it's great for you to read as a tutor, as a teacher, as a parent, because it talks about all the different ways that you can engage with learning and everyday tasks if you've got dyslexia or if you're supporting somebody with dyslexia. And it talks about different, like famous people who've got dyslexia, and it shouldn't be seen as a hindrance. It's about all your thinking skills. So I'll definitely pop on a couple of links to some books that people might find really useful as well to have a look at. Do the course now, looking back when I was doing my research about where to do the course, and you might have a couple of options that you think are more suitable to you, like it would fit in with your lifestyle and things. But I would say definitely try and find people that have done the courses at those particular places. Because it's everywhere runs it very differently. And like the children we tutor, everyone learns in a very different way. So I would definitely try and talk to people that have been on the course and find out what their kind of views and their opinions are. And then, like that thing about ring fencing time, right from the beginning, and really try and be strict with yourself, because if you've said so my course was always on a Tuesday.
Right, okay.
So I only had to go. It worked out roughly once a month, not in the summer holidays, but roughly once a month we would go in for a face-to-face day, and the rest of the time it would be, self-study, going through PowerPoints and research and doing your like training hours and all of that kind of thing. And, you have to record yourself teaching, so that and you have to submit them. And then upload it, and then they, like a lesson observation really, and then they go through. So my course was always on a Tuesday face to face. So I tried to keep a Tuesday where that would be my day that I would try and do all my uni work. But that's why I say ring fencing it, because it's really easy to say, isn't it? But I would say much more strict with myself as time went on. Because otherwise you're trying to do things at the last minute, aren't you? And that's when you then become really kind of stressed about. We all do it, but definitely ring fence things. And the other thing is, as a private tutor, and if you're not in a school still, you have to be able to have access to students who you can do your training hours on. Okay. So it's definitely worthwhile thinking about where you're going to do them. So I could have had students that I was working with if I felt they kind of met that criteria of possibly being dyslexic. But I actually worked with two local primary schools. I offered my services obviously for free because it's my training. Explained to them what I was doing, and then they allowed me to work with some of their students. Again, you have to have permission from the school, you have to have a parent. So they were school, I didn't know those children or their families. So I had to be really confident in explaining to them what I was doing and what the benefit of me being able to use their child for my training was.
Of course,
because they're putting their trust in you, aren't they, to think you're supporting my child, but I'm somebody that they don't know. So definitely making sure you've got people or families that you can work with, or schools that you think actually they would be really willing for me to go in and work with them, because you have to get permission from the families that they will allow you to video.
Of course, as part of your submission. It's really interesting, Sarah, and again it's all these really fascinating details that we're so grateful for you to come on and share with us today, again about the realities that goes into it. I think that's so interesting. And the schools, so for anyone who's listening, I suppose you've got to put that into your forward planning, haven't you? Like if I apply for that course, I've got to maybe line up some schools and make some little connections and make sure. And I suppose being a private tutor sort of helps, because you can say like, oh, I used to be Senko, I used to be this, and now I'm doing this.
And like I say, you can use private, students that you're working with privately. I just feel if I was going to use them for my training purposes, I don't feel that I could then charge them as I would normally. Does that make sense? Training that I need to do. I didn't have any more time after school to be able to offer out my my services. So I'm not able to take any more training students after school. So that's why that working with schools has really worked for me. So it's just thinking about all those different things, because if I then had to do the training to replace some of the hours I'm getting paid, then obviously I'm not getting paid as much money. And so there was lots to think about. Maybe that's why it took me such a long time.
I think that's another really good point to consider, which is almost keeping it separate, your sort of business side of you being a tutor to the students, like you've said, that you will use towards your training, and that's a different situation. And I suppose it makes things a bit, although it might be a little bit more to juggle at the beginning, it kind of saves yourself, your future self, any kind of dichotomies that could occur later on.
Everything very separate. Like it was, this is my tutoring business. I'm doing a course. This is what happened. So this is the day that I'm going to do my course. This is the day that I'm going to go into school. See, the schools were really grateful that I was able to offer. They looked at it as I can offer them some free support. Things to consider. It's not straightforward. I'm going to do this course, and then I had to. It might be different for others, but for this course I had to complete like an application form, and had to say what previous level of learning that I'd already done. So I was able to say that I'm a qualified teacher with QTS and I've done my Senko course. But there's a really wide range of people on the course, from higher education down to like early years teachers. So it was a very mixed, private schools, independent schools, tutors, mainstream education. So there was a really big, wide range of people that were on the course, and that was good because you get to hear things from different points of view as well.
It is always interesting, like you say, to hear, like, as a fellow educator, what they get up to or how they're adapting or trying. Oh no, so very much so for anyone who's listening, it's all these things to consider. So then in terms of my next question then, Sarah, is from everything that you've learned, what are some sort of little strategies or things that you've learned from your course, from your training, that you could share with our lovely listeners today to support students who are perhaps have dyslexia, or if the families are thinking, could it be dyslexia? What would you be able to spill the tea on that area?
I would definitely say that a multi-sensory approach to learning is essential for those students. I, as a class teacher, as a Senko, as a private tutor, going into schools or whatever, you see so much that children are given the same phonics from year R all the way through primary school, and they're being given the same things to learn all the time, flashcards and things like that. And those children that still haven't understood or haven't grasped phonics after they've been doing it for a couple of years, they need to be taught in a different way. And right from, if you think about the early years setting, everything is multisensory, and there's some schools now that year one is very much going in that way. But the multisensory side of it, they need to be using, multisensory, 2 or more senses to be able to retain that information. And then they're not always going to remember that from the first time. It's lots of repetition, lots of going back over it. But that whole, multisensory, whether it's kind of rainbow writing, whether, you've got your high frequency words, I wouldn't give more than say 5 words at a time that they were learning. Write the words on a piece of paper or a card, and they're using different colours, and getting them to say the letter names as they're writing them, and they're doing that repeating it all the time. So I did, they've got a word card, just say they were learning the word said. So I'd have said written on a piece of paper, and they would go over it with one colour saying S-A-I-D said. S-A-I-D said. And they do it about 5 times before they would even move on to the next word. They're going to need that more than once. You know, writing it in sand. And it's not just for the little ones. You know, about those children that have had phonics teaching right from the word go, just doing the same isn't going to help them. So that whole multisensory learning is so important, and it's fun if they're doing it in lots of different ways. And that's one of the things that I find with some of the older children I work with, you know, year 5, year 6, they become disengaged because they're just given the same things all of the time. And, you know, I know a lot of schools, you know, their hands are tied. This is what they're told to do. This is what they have to do. But as an independent private tutor, as a specialist dyslexia teacher, you know, let's go for it. Let's teach in a multisensory way. Let's make it more engaging. Let's make it more fun, and hopefully the children will enjoy it. I use as well, there's a blank snakes and ladders grid on the Twinkl, that they're learning. So I choose 5 new words and I write them on there, like keep repeating them. And then I choose words that they already know really well. And then we play snakes and ladders where they're reading, you know, reading the words all of the time. And they love doing those kind of things. It's just doing it in a different way, isn't it?
Of course. Oh, I love that. And I bet you come away sort of buzzing away with inspiration and, you know, such brilliance every time. Because learning is great. As adults, we love to learn, don't we? And this must be so inspiring for you. Again, I always think about how you say Sendco as well. You know, it's such a wealth of experience. So this on top it must be just so exciting, Sarah. And it's lovely to hear that about the older students, because I suppose it could be quite difficult for any new tutors, or perhaps, like how you said before, you're at the kind of beginning of this new chapter, to perhaps to meet some disengaged older learners. But I can imagine they come around though, you know, after some time.
I get that whole thing of, you know, in a whole class environment, if you're an older child and you're continuously being you know, these are words that some of the children have said to me, you know, they're given a book that looks really babyish. They don't want to read it in front of their peers. You know, they feel embarrassed. Their self-confidence any good. So, you know, investing in, you know, some really good, high quality, dyslexia-friendly books that look, you know, from the front, they look a lot older. You know, you engage them more. And again, they, you know, perhaps they're not going to want to do some of those multi-sensory activities in a classroom with lots of other children who are older that would be thinking, why are they doing that? Things like the rainbow writing, you can do that with any age at primary school, right up to year 6, because they're going to have words on there that they're learning. It doesn't matter what word is written down, you can do that whole multisensory approach. So, you know, it's slightly thinking outside of the box, isn't it? And how you can make it engaging, and making sure you're using, you know, multiple senses to learn how to spell new words. And but, you know, it is different when you're working in that one-to-one situation. I mean, I have a couple of children come to me they're not diagnosed as dyslexic, but they've got literacy difficulties. One's year 3 and one's year 6, and they come at the same time, working on very similar skills, but they've got, you know, different words, or they read different books and things like that. And, you know, they come and they're quite happy to work together. It doesn't matter that one's year 3, one's year 6. It's the fact that they're engaged, and I think that's the most important thing.
And but it's nice for them because it's that group, isn't it? That group experience. There's a sort of little like, oh, it's our time, you know, we're going to do this, and it's lovely to hear that. And I think once again it highlights the power of tuition, isn't it? That you can have that time with those learners and they can feel quite confident and excited, and it takes away that stigma, doesn't it?
Everyone wants to do it, you know. I would definitely say go for access to students that you can do that work on. Are you going to be able to ring fence some time? You know, it's all those kind of things really that I think if it's something you really want to do, go for it. But, you know, it's a commitment. I was going to say, and also an expense because you're paying for the course. You know, mine was just under £4,000.
Right. Okay.
Course, but then you have to buy all the assessments that go with it.
Yeah.
You know, so that's an additional cost. So it's that forward thinking, that forward planning.
Yeah.
You know, am I able to release that money to be able to do that? And I thought of it as like a long-term investment.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of money I've had to pay out at the moment. But, you know, eventually I will recoup that money. But I've learned so much. That's the biggest thing, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. And so as a little tag on question to that, where would you like to see yourself, Sarah, in, you know, again, sounds a bit cheesy, you know, people say 5 years time, but where would you like to see yourself there with this under your belt now?
So hopefully, as long as everything, this last bit goes to plan, hopefully I'll be able to start practicing officially from April. That's kind of what I've got in my head, that it'll take us to Easter and then from there. And so what I would really love to be able to do is be able to work with some schools. I'd love to be able to offer some like multisensory training to, you know, teachers, but you know, lots of TAs are the ones that do that work and perhaps haven't accessed any of that training. So kind of long term, I'd love to be able to, you know, deliver some training sessions to teachers and TAs to be able to do, you know, some assessments, but really the ultimate goal is that I would be able to have my own dyslexia tutor groups, which would be me working with some other adults as well, and being able to, you know, have maybe a slightly alternative curriculum to what they would be accessing. But, you know, that's kind of a long-term goal. But yeah, that's what I'd really love to be able to do, to, you know, make sure that these children feel that they are successful, they can achieve. And if that's how, you know, myself and a team can make them feel, then I think that's kind of, you know, job done. That there are so many different strategies that they can use now. There's no need for them to be left to kind of sit there and think that they're kind of failing, really, because there's so many resources out there. I know it's difficult in a whole class situation, don't get me wrong.
Of course,
Children,
but
in this kind of private tuition, that's really what I'd like to be able to kind of package together and be able to do, really.
Well, that's so exciting. Oh, we'll watch this space. Yeah. We'll see it 5 years down the line. It'll be amazing. We'll come back to this podcast and we can talk about it. Oh, it really is inspiring, Sarah. And thank you for talking about this topic today, because it's one that gets asked about so often. Tutors, you know, are so interested in it. And I think you'll provide a lot of inspiration for any tutors who are thinking, oh, should I, you know, really want to, on top of all of the fabulous advice and the realities that go behind this. So, and her social media on here too, so you can go and say hello. And yeah, if you have any questions, make sure to ask away. But thank you for spilling the tea with us today, Sarah. It's been
thank you very much.